When we look at the recent shifts on love and marriage, Huntsville, one of the biggest conversations right now centers around Nell Fletcher and her role in the show. For many viewers, Nell went from being someone who was connected to the cast through friendships, especially with Melody Shari, to suddenly taking on a larger and more noticeable position. What is people talking is whether Nell's rise on the show came at the expense of her friendship with Melody. The question that people are asking is, did Nell betray Melody in order to place herself at the center of the show and secure her own storyline? When Nell first came onto the scene, she wasn't someone people thought of as a central figure. She was more of a background friend who would appear in group settings or when her husband Chris Fletcher was around. Over time, though, viewers began noticing that Nell wasn't just sitting quietly in the background. She started stepping into conversations, asking questions, and taking control of scenes in a way that felt very different from most of the other women. In fact, in some of the most recent episodes, Nell has been the one holding her own and even outsmarting women who have been on the show since season 1, like Letitia Scott. This shift makes people wonder, was it intentional? Was Nell quietly studying how the show worked, watching the dynamics between the women, and waiting for her moment to step up? Because if you look closely, Nell has moved very strategically. While others rely on drama, yelling, and constant conflicts, Nell has leaned on her ability to remember details, speak clearly, and not back down in conversations. That is exactly what we saw in her recent argument with Letitia, where she completely turned the situation around and made Tisha look unprepared and insecure. The scene between Nell and Tisha was a big moment. Tisha thought she had a strong point when she brought up Atlanta and tried to use it against Nell and her husband Chris. She seemed to think it would weaken Nell's position and put her on the defensive. Instead, Nell was able to recall every single detail of what happened, remind Tisha of the truth, and even point out how Tisha herself had started the whole conversation. What should have been a moment for Tisha to shine turned into a moment that highlighted Nell's sharpness and quick thinking. By the end of it, Tisha looked flustered, while Nell looked calm and in control. That kind of dominance doesn't just happen. It comes from someone who knows exactly what they're doing. This is where the idea of Nell being a strategist comes in. Many fans now believe that Nell has been planning her approach carefully, and part of that plan may have been stepping away from Melody. For years, Melody was the clear star of the show. Even when she wasn't filming every scene, she was the one viewers followed the most. Her fan base is strong and loyal. Being aligned with Melody could be beneficial. But it could also limit someone like Nell, because as long as Melody was around, no one else could really stand out. Melody has the presence, the fan support, and the storyline power that cannot be matched. So, for Nell, the only way to carve out a bigger space for herself might have been to separate from Melody and take on the other women head-on. When you look back, it's almost like Nell saw an opening. With Melody stepping back from the show and choosing to focus more on her life outside of filming, Nell could finally step forward. Without Melody there to control the energy and take over the scenes, Nell had space to shine. She was able to position herself as someone who could handle conversations better than the Scott women and bring in her own real-life issues, like her blended family dynamics and past challenges in her marriage. These things gave her a deeper storyline to pull from, something that reality TV thrives on. It's also worth pointing out that Nell is different from some of the other women because she doesn't seem afraid of transparency. While the Scotts are often accused of hiding behind guarded walls, avoiding direct answers, and protecting certain images, Nell seems to be willing to put more of her reality on the table. That makes her stand out. If she's willing to share the real ups and downs in her family, viewers will connect with that, and producers will notice it. Reality TV rewards people who are open, and Nell appears to understand that perfectly. But the real turning point in this conversation is the idea of betrayal. Nell and Melody were friends before all of this. For years, they had a bond that was real, not just for the cameras. So, when fans saw Nell suddenly distancing herself from Melody and aligning more with the Scotts and other cast members, it felt like a betrayal. To many people, it looked like Nell chose television fame over her friendship with Melody. That is where the pain lies for the viewers who love Melody. Because to them, Melody has already been through enough betrayal in her personal life, and to see a friend like Nell possibly doing the same thing feels wrong. On the other hand, some people argue that this isn't about betrayal at all. They see it as Nell simply stepping into her own space. After all, everyone on the show has to look out for themselves if they want to remain relevant. If Nell had stayed under Melody's shadow, she might have been pushed out eventually or never had a chance to be seen as more than just a friend of the star. By creating her own path and asserting herself in scenes, she is making sure she has a role that cannot be ignored. From that perspective, it isn't betrayal, it's survival in the world of reality TV. Still, when you look at how Nell has handled herself with the Scots, it's clear she's playing a careful game. She doesn't go in screaming or fighting. Instead, she chooses her words, stays calm, and lets the other person unravel. That's why the scene with Tisha was so embarrassing for Tisha. Nell didn't even have to raise her voice. She just calmly reminded her of facts until Tisha lost her cool and walked out. That kind of composure makes Nell look strong and unshakable, which is rare on this show. There's also the interesting idea that Nell might be producing the show in her own mind. We've heard people like Nene Leakes say the same thing about Kenya Moore, that Kenya thinks strategically about how to set up scenes, how to spark drama, and how to make sure she comes out looking strong. When you compare that to Nell, it makes sense. Nell seems to know exactly what buttons to push and when. She seems to understand how to give producers the drama they need while also keeping her dignity intact. That's not easy to do. Most cast members either give too much chaos and lose control of their image, or they hold back so much that they become boring. Nell has found a balance, and that balance makes her stand out. Another big question is how long Nell can maintain this position. Right now, she looks strong, smart, and in control. But the show has a history of turning on people. We saw how Melody was ganged up on for years by multiple cast members. If Nell continues to dominate scenes and embarrass the original cast members, there's a strong chance they will eventually turn on her too. The Scots in particular don't like being made to look weak or outsmarted. If Nell keeps showing them up, she may find herself on the receiving end of the same group attacks that Melody once faced. The difference is, Nell seems more prepared for it. She doesn't rely on emotions in the same way that some of the other women do. She stays logical, which might help her survive those moments. But no matter how strong she is, reality TV thrives on conflict, and sooner or later, Nell will be challenged in a bigger way. The question is whether she will be able to stand as firmly then as she does now. For now, though, Nell is absolutely benefiting from Melody's absence. With Melody gone, the show needed someone who could bring intelligence, sharpness, and real conversation. Nell has stepped into that gap perfectly. She may not have the same star power as Melody, but she is clearly using her position to become more central. And even if some fans feel betrayed, others are intrigued by her ability to dominate scenes and push back against people who usually go unchallenged. So, was it betrayal? From Melody's supporters, yes, it looks like Nell chose the show over her friend. From Nell's perspective, though, it may have simply been her moment to shine, and she took it. In a world like reality TV, waiting too long to claim your place means losing it forever. And Nell seems determined not to let that happen. What's certain is that Nell Fletcher has completely changed the energy of the show. Whether you see her as a strategist or a betrayer, you cannot deny that she has forced people to pay attention. She has proven she can stand toe-to-toe with longtime cast members and come out looking stronger. And if she really has been producing her moves in her mind, then she's playing a long game that could keep her at the center of the show for seasons to come. The real test will come when the reunion arrives and the group dynamics shift again. Will the cast try to gang up on her? Will Nell stay calm and composed, or will she finally crack under pressure? Those are the moments that reveal who can last on reality TV and who fades away. For now, though, Nell is winning. She has people talking, she has people debating, and she has people questioning whether she betrayed Melody or simply outsmarted everyone else. And no matter which side you fall on, one thing is clear, Nell Fletcher has positioned herself as someone who cannot be ignored on Love and Marriage, Huntsville.